Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augmented Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy. Alright, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I'm your host as usual, and obviously welcome back to the show. Today's episode 149 of the show, and before we get started, we're going to do a little bit of house cleaning real quick, because, well, you guys know we always like to do it around here, and it only makes sense that we do. And, well, this is the last house cleaning for the year, so, you know, depending on how you view this year, it could be good or bad, but we'll get into that. But let's do the last house cleaning for 2020. So I do want to say thank you guys for coming back and listening. Today's episode, it really does mean a lot to me. You guys constantly keep coming back and keep downloading these episodes. You keep sharing these episodes. You constantly keep letting me know how you feel about them, because it really does mean a lot, to be honest. To me, it does. And I've been very honest and transparent about that it really does mean a lot to me. I also want to say thank you to the Patreon backers. You guys have continued to be great. You guys have continued to, you know, grow throughout this year. We've only had one backer, and now we got two. So hey, that's a victory, man. We increased Patreon backers. Even if it's just by one person, it's still an increase, and that's really all that matters to me, to be honest. If I'm being transparent with you guys, it's just being honest. Like, an increase is an increase. But I do want to say thank you guys. You guys are great. I do want to say that if you do want to become a Patreon backer, you can obviously click the link down below, whether you're listening to the audio version or watching the video version on YouTube, that you can just click the link down below and you can become a Patreon backer. There's 2 tier setups, so you can just choose whichever one you prefer, or which one, you know, overall you prefer, or which one you feel like you want to pick. I do also want to say thank you guys for this incredible year we've had so far, and I do want to save that part a little bit more for the actual, like, discussion, which I can't even say it's a discussion because it's a real talk episode. But I do want to say thank you guys for everything, and you guys are great. But let's get right into the real talk now, because this is me. I wanted to save this for a little bit later, and I wanted to do 2 episodes this week, but I decided that it was better to do one, given my personal circumstances going on, which in due time I'll explain, or if you know me in real life, that can be easily explained. But I do want to say that I decided to go with 1 episode this week because I wanted to do a recap of 2020. I know what you guys are thinking. You're like, Josh, you know, 2020 has been a very interesting year. And I agree. 2020 has definitely been a very interesting, peculiar, like, just whack year. If I'm being honest with you guys, like, this year has been pretty crazy. And I can attest to that. A lot of stuff has happened this year. A lot of stuff has changed this year. And I feel like I just want to reflect on it, because even though, yes, this year has been shit, I'm not going to lie to you guys, it's been pretty shit, there's been a lot of good come out of it. And I do want to reflect on that, because I feel like it's just not healthy or accurate to just state all the negatives and pretend that that's all that's happened, because that's not true. That's not what happened. That's only a piece of the puzzle. And I do want to reflect on it a little bit, because I feel that, hey, maybe this can give someone a little bit of perspective or introspective, that they can look back at this year and be like, hey, yes, a lot of bad stuff has happened this year. We're not going to pretend that a lot of stuff hasn't happened, but we're also going to acknowledge the good, because that's also important, is we acknowledge the good. And there has been a lot of good, and I do want to acknowledge that. Like, yes, for me, 2020 has started off a bit funky, because the whole stuff with my family, with my grandfather passing, and school just being annoying. Like, I was barely in the spring semester of 2020, and I was just getting into my circuits class for college, and I was still pursuing engineering at the time. And yeah, that class was kicking my ass because it was a very difficult class. I didn't expect that it would just jump this. I didn't expect the difficulty to jump that much, especially when something that I felt very comfortable with the material, that I was like, okay, I get this in class. I get this, how this works. And then when it came to the second test, I barely passed with the skin of my teeth. And then the third test was just brutal because of COVID, we had to transfer to online classes, and the teacher just wasn't very, I wouldn't say adept to adapting to it, but she wasn't the best at accommodating the transition. And that made things much difficult. And it ended up making me fail the class. Like, on top of the whole thing with my grandfather, because like with my granddad passing, that was rough, to be honest. Like, I'm not gonna pretend it didn't hurt, because it's my grandfather. My grandfather, he was a cool guy. Like, my grandfather always wanted to see how I was doing, was always happy to see me. And it was rough, because I couldn't be there. And on top of stuff like that, like just being depressed, because I was still going through this phase of learning how to be content while being single, because I know that's not an easy thing to deal with sometimes, that especially given the whole world circumstances right now, being single is not the most enjoyable experience. And I think it became a little bit more difficult as over time I kept seeing my friends either celebrating 2, 3, 4, 5 years of being with their partners, or getting engaged, or actually getting married, and posting pictures of their weddings and stuff like that. And it kind of stung a little bit, like, you always being told you're such a great guy, you're always a really sweet, loving guy. However, there's always a but right afterwards, and that always bothered me. And that was something that I had to learn over time to deal with, that I had to learn to be content with who I am as a person and truly know who I am. And at the same time, it's learning to be content, because one thing that my mentor told me was, Josh, you're never going to be content when you can't be content when it's just you and God. Because if you can't do that, you'll never be content when there's somebody else there. You'll never be happy. You'll never truly enjoy having that person around, because you cannot be content by yourself, and you can't acknowledge that you need to be a complete person before you find that other person, because two halves are not going to make one person. No, it's two complete people become one. That's why they say stuff like two become one. It's two complete, emotionally healthy, like healthy in every aspect of your life, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever aspect you want to add on there. Two healthy people becoming one. That's the goal. That's the end goal. That's what you should strive for. It's not two halves trying to fix each other, because you can't fix each other. And that was something that I had to learn. That was hard. On top of the whole stuff with school, on top of the whole stuff with my grandfather, that it added up. I was stressed. I was annoyed. I was frustrated. I was not happy for a good portion of this year. I really wasn't. It wasn't until I would say, maybe not until like maybe May or around that area, June, around that time, that I started to become a little bit more happier, that I started to learn what it meant to be content with my life. And that was rough, because at that point in time, COVID had already kicked in. A lot of the lockdown restrictions have been enforced, and it just wasn't easy, because as much as I love my family, sometimes it can get a bit annoying, and that's nothing on them. It's just, that's what happens naturally, is you're naturally going to get annoyed with people you're close with. Like, some people say, Josh, that's weird. No, that's perfectly normal, because that's human interaction, is you're gonna get annoyed regardless. That's okay to get annoyed at people you care about deeply, because you're such, I would say, you're very vulnerable with each other because you know each other that well. And that was just the reality. Was I got annoyed. And then, yes, as much as it does seem that I'm just like, Josh, you just seem to be, you know, dragging on about all the bad stuff, why don't we talk about the good stuff? I would say primarily would be the increase of the show, the fact that we got over 1,000 extra total downloads this year. The fact that we hit 2,000 plus total downloads this year was incredible for the show. The fact that the show has expanded to a YouTube version as well, a proper YouTube version, instead of just, well, what the media host does is it takes the audio episode and then pumps it on YouTube, but it just puts all the Spreaker, all the stuff on there. So that's why you see like a lot of the older episodes have like Spreaker and like from the media host and stuff like that. But it's still the same episode as the audio version. It's just published like that. But the fact that we were able to start a proper like YouTube version of the show, like video and everything, with, you know, video production, video editing and stuff like that. The fact that I started to dip my toes in photography and videography and got much better at it. And I got a lot of practice with my church because we were able to set up the live streaming at my church. And now we have a successful live stream going with it. The fact that now the services are able to be live streamed and people are able to see it. The fact that I was able to grow into a much deeper relationship with my mentors. The fact that I was able to grow much deeper in my relationship with the congregation in my home church. The fact that I was able to make new friends. The fact that I was able to become a CA, a community advisor on campus. And that has been an experience in its own right, because it's been difficult too. I'm not going to pretend that it's been easy. There's been highs, there's been lows, there's people that like me, there's people that don't like me, and that's okay. That's normal. That's part of the process. But it has definitely been rewarding, because I was able to do what I said I wanted to do. That if I am able to impact even the lives of just one person, that is a success for me. That tells me that I'm doing my job. And I have. And for me, it was heartwarming and it was fulfilling. It was such a blessing that I understood why my mentor told me, Josh, the position that you have is such a wonderful opportunity to serve. I never understood what that meant until it finally clicked, until it finally made sense. And it was incredible. And it was such a fulfilling, it was such an emotional experience that I honestly can't forget because of how impactful it was. And for me, it just meant a lot. And I really do appreciate those friendships, those bonds that I have made so far throughout this year, even though, yes, this year has been pretty crap. We're not going to pretend like it's not crap. But there's definitely been highs and lows. That's how it always is. There's always a balance. There's always going to be highs. There's always going to be lows. You're never always going to have, this amazing experience the whole time, because the reality is the bad stuff's going to kick in. It's just how you view it, how you process it, and how you handle it. That, yes, I'm proud that I was able to become more competent or more confident when it comes to photography and videography. Like, yes, I had to ask for advice. I had to learn and research equipment, like what suits my needs best. And that's why, like, here we are. Like, I am currently using my Fujifilm X-T4 with its 16 to 55 millimeter f2.8. That this camera just fits my needs because I love the video that comes out of this camera. I love the photos that comes out of this camera. This camera is a very professional tool that I like using. And yes, does it have compromises? Absolutely. It's still a good camera regardless overall. That it's one of my favorite cameras of the year. The fact that I was able to upgrade a lot of the audio stuff for the show, the fact that we have a proper boom arm, even though, well, obviously in these videos you cannot see it, but the fact that I have a boom arm now for the show, which I actually prefer having my boom arm instead of using my desktop stands because the boom arm is a little bit more comfortable. I like having, this new microphone. I like having this Shure SM7B. This thing is great. The funny thing is I know how to properly use it, unlike most people. That is sadly the truth. It's one of the most popular microphones on the market for streamers, broadcasters, or whatever. And a lot of people don't know how to use it. thankfully, I did my homework. I did my research. I talked to the right people and I figured out how to properly use this thing. And that's why the show sounds the way it does. But even though there's all this growth, there's all this progress, also another thing is like getting my car again. The fact that I got a car again after my accident that happened in 2018, that my car hydroplaned and I ended up losing my car. Granted, I'm still alive because, well, I'm here, but I lost my car and I didn't have a car for a while. And that kind of sucks, being in a college town 5 hours away from your parents where you don't have any easy way of getting around. And the fact that I was able to get a car, to me, that was a blessing. That was a gift from my parents that I appreciate, that I really appreciate. The fact that my parents constantly keep going out of their way and showing me how much they love me, and that they're like, hey, we are making these decisions, we're sacrificing so much so that your life can be better than ours. And there was definitely been some life lessons that I want to share with you guys that I've learned throughout this year. One of them, the most important one, is learning to be content with your life. That is overarching to me. The most important life lesson I've learned throughout this year is learning to be content with my own life. That means learning to be content when you have everything and when you have nothing. And for a lot of people, that's difficult. It's difficult for a lot of people to grasp that it's a choice, that it is a way of living that you actively have to choose every single day, because some days are easier than others. And that's just the reality. I speak from experience that some days are much more difficult to say, I'm going to be content. Because being content is not a feeling. It's a way of living. It's a choice. Happiness is a feeling. It comes and goes always. Being content never changes. It's constant. And I feel like that's something that I had to learn very, very, very difficult. Like, it was not an easy thing to learn. I'm not saying this like it was the easiest thing I ever learned and I've still figured it out, because I'm still trying to figure it out. I haven't properly truly figured it out, because there's some days, like I said, where I don't make that choice, where I'm not being constant or consistent, where I'm choosing the old ways, old habits that don't lead me anywhere, that don't make my life better or don't help me grow or help me get into a better position in life. And I had to learn that, and I'm still learning it. That's just the cold hard realities. I'm still learning how to be content. And it takes time, it takes years. But I'm glad that I'm learning it now rather than learning it later. I'd rather learn that lesson now than have to deal with it maybe 10, 20 years, 30 years down the line, Another thing was learning to be content while being single. Learning to be okay with being single. That, hey, it's okay. Being single is not a curse. It's a blessing. Use this time now to grow as a person, know who you are as a person, and then the right person will show up. But you have to focus on you first. And that was something that was a bit difficult for me, because I'm usually someone that likes putting the needs of others before me, that I like to focus on others. And sometimes that causes me to not focus on myself. And I got caught slipping. So that's just the reality of it. I got caught slipping. But I do also want to say another lesson I learned was, I wouldn't say follow your feelings, because that's a terrible piece of advice, but I would say learn to take the hint. Because I have noticed that from many conversations I had with my therapist and things like that, and even just other people, and just, looking back and reflecting a lot of experiences in my life, I'm a pretty creative person. I've been told this multiple times. Like, Josh, you're actually pretty creative. You like drawing. You like, taking photos. Obviously, I like streaming. I like playing on the computer with the guys, or the Xbox, or whatever. And I took it and I started doing photography. and it's really fun to me. It's really enjoyable. I like doing it. I like taking portraits for people. Like, I eventually want to get a position where I can shoot weddings for people. Granted, am I going to be a full-time wedding photographer? Probably not. Probably not. But it would definitely be a nice thing to do on the side. Same thing with shooting videos for weddings as well. That's something that, to me, I like to capture those very beautiful moments, like very intimate moments, because to me, it's just how I envision things of, I would say, people say like kind of trying to make things a perfect way, but it's just something beautiful to see, you know, two people genuinely loving each other, knowing that love is not a feeling. That's the important thing, is knowing two people that know that love is not a feeling, but a choice, genuinely loving each other, caring for one another, protecting one another, nurturing one another, uplifting one another, sacrificing for one another. To me, that is such a beautiful thing to see that I want everyone to see. And that's why, like, I want to shoot a wedding one day. I want to be able to have that opportunity. Maybe 2021 might be the year where I get to shoot weddings, and that'd be pretty fun. Yeah, some people say, well, yeah, it's also a good payday, but that's not the point. The pay is just a, side benefit. But it's definitely an enjoyable experience that I just want to have that experience, But I do also want to say that it's been a very interesting year. That's just cold, dead hard honest, that this has been a very wild, crazy year that I'm surprised we're almost done. Because the time that this episode goes live, it's going to be the 30th of December. So we're not even at New Year's yet. But I do want to say thank you guys for everything, though, because you guys have been with me throughout this entire year. You've been listening to the show. You've been watching the show. You've been sharing the episodes. You've been constantly voting on the episodes and the topics that you want me to talk about. And to me, it just really means a lot. The fact that we hit over 2,000 total downloads is incredible. The fact that we celebrated the 1-year anniversary of the show, the fact that we started including video, the fact that we increased the audio quality and the production of the show in general. It has been a good year for the show, to be honest. It really has. And I've been very happy. I've been very thankful. I've been grateful for everything you've done. And you guys continue to do, because you guys are awesome and you guys are just wonderful. I do also want to say that that's another lesson that I had to learn, was being grateful, because I have had so many blessings in my life, whether it be my family, my friends, making new friends, adding people to my family. When I say my family, I always tell people, to me, my family are all the people that I care about. My family is not just exclusive to people that are of my bloodline, but I always tell people that there's times where water has become thicker than blood. And that has always held true, that I invite people into my family and I treat them as my family, that I care about them, I love them, I protect them, that to me, I treat them as one of my own. And that has been something that I had to learn, was to be grateful for all the blessings I have in my life, that I shouldn't feel ashamed, or that no one should make me feel bad because I've been so blessed. Like, I shouldn't feel bad because of that, because that is what's been given to me. And to me, I'm grateful for everything. Yes. Has things been difficult? Absolutely. I wish I could have the opportunity to have said hi to my grandfather or say I love him again. I wish I could. But the past is the past. You can only affect the future. I know, speaking for my family, my grandfather will always be with us. He always will be. It was ironic that a piece of advice my grandfather gave us, that specifically he gave to my mom and my aunts and my uncle, that a piece of advice he gave them was, the Brennas do not bend a knee to their problems. They don't. It's ironic because that is very similar to a proverb that I know that says, for the righteous fall 7 times, arises again and again, but the wicked stumble and calamity strikes. That I knew that. And my grandfather knew that. How interesting. But overall, this has been an incredible year. I know some people say, well, depending on what context you want to say incredible, but it definitely is an interesting year. I'm glad that this year is finally going to be over because a lot of people want this year to be over with, and I don't blame them for wanting this year to be over with. Hopefully 2021 could be better. Maybe. Like 2020 already set the bar pretty low to, be worse, but we'll find out. We'll see how 2021 turns out. The most important thing is to live one day at a time, to not make plans for the future. There's nothing wrong with having plans, but just be mindful that not everything is set in stone. That not everything is set in stone. Live one day at a time. Be grateful for every day you have, and be grateful for everything you have to begin with. Learn to be content with your own life. And if you're single, there's nothing wrong with being single. Just keep being patient. The right person will show up. But you should not be lazy. You should be constantly getting ready for that right person, because they are not going to go slow when they show up. That's just the reality of it. When the right person shows up, they're wanting to go, like, fast. Like, I know some people say, Josh, it's a bit crazy, don't you think? But it's like, it happens every time. When it's the right person, they do not want to go slow. But I thank you guys for this incredible year. Thank you guys for a wonderful 2020. Yes, we try to make the most of it, or at least try to make the most of a pretty bad situation. But I do thank you guys for everything. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. I hope you guys have a wonderful New Year's Eve with your family, friends. Try to be safe in the process because, like I said, the world is still kind of poop right now. And hopefully in time, we can go back to a new normal, or at least establish a new normal when all this is said and done. And we can see how things turn out. But we can always make progress together, that you're not alone in the situation. I'm never alone. You're never alone. That we can always strive for better together. Because I always feel like being community and union with one another is always the best way to go about things, because you're never alone. You have somebody there that can understand, that can relate, that can empathize. They may not understand 100% how you feel, but they can sure empathize and at least make an effort to understand. But I thank you guys for everything. I love you guys to death. Please continue to be safe. Please don't do anything dumb. Please have yourselves a wonderful week. As I mentioned, we're only having one episode this week, given current circumstances and just family stuff. But I hope you guys enjoy this episode, this 2020 recap. It was a real talk. That this was just me pouring out my heart and pouring out what's on my mind and just reflecting on this year. And while I have failed, I have also succeeded. It's also going to be interesting now because, well, now that I'm a business major, some people are going to make jokes like, Josh, you're going to get rid of that episode of being in engineering? That'll probably be the first episode of 2021 where we explain, why I chose to do a business, or specifically marketing, but same jazz, same, it's the same thing. But I love you guys to death. Please continue to be safe. Have yourselves a wonderful week, guys. I will see you guys next week, and it will be the first episode of 2021. So it's going to be very exciting. So I'll see you guys next week. I love you guys. I love you guys. Oh my gosh. I love you guys to death. Bye, guys.
Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.